It's Wynton Marsalis. Pretty sure he knows a lot of things. I just sat back saying he is just going to say a sentence that ties it all up in a bow and has the answer. That's not what happened. His answer was deep. It was complex. Basically, his answer was, the issue is deep and complex, but if you see a void or a lack in your circumstances, his message was put yourself out there, put yourself in there. In that moment, I just felt like he was speaking directly to me.
Hello, and welcome to episode 68 of the BandWagon podcast for the week of September 1st, 2025. On this edition of the program, news and notes from the band world, including some thoughts about shifting gears, some thoughts from a noted band composer directed at public policymakers, a story that follows up on the examination of technology versus humanity in musical activity from the last episode in an unsettling way, and I have a conversation about a particular subset of band members. I'm your host, Rob Hammerton. Hello, dear listener. Well, there are an awful lot of items in this week's episode that have to do with transitions. It wasn't a theme that I planned, but here it is. Some of these transitions are joyful, others are not. Some of these stories deal with how we successfully navigate moves from one understanding of life or culture or band music to another. One of those stories has to do with proactive efforts to change long-held assumptions. One of those stories has to do with transitions that are created by people who appear to value preparing students for the 21st century future, whatever that means, over the human element of participation in the arts or music or band. One theme, exemplified by many stories that are kind of all over the place. I do hope you find them all interesting. So, empty your spit valves and away we go. Let's play the first strain. In this episode's first strain, news and notes from the band world. Dateline, Staten Island, New York. Credit on this story to the reporting and writing of Anne-Marie Barron of the online outlet Staten Island Live. Monsignor Farrell High School, a private boys' high school, has announced the discontinuation of its marching band program for the upcoming school year, citing diminishing feeder programs and changing cultural trends. For decades, the band has been a fixture at Staten Island parades, home football games, concerts, and weekly competitions. The band has performed at MetLife Stadium and Walt Disney World. This past May, the band received second-place honors from Hershey Park's Music in the Parks Festival. According to a letter sent by school administrators on August 15th to parents, the school is replacing the program with a program called The Music Studio. The school's communications director, Greg Guastavino, described it as a cutting-edge program designed to give students a creative space to play, compose, and explore the performing arts through modern technology. In a statement sent to Staten Island Live, Guastavino said, quote, "The new initiative reflects our continued commitment to evolving with the times while preparing our students for the future. As student interest and regional culture have shifted away from large-scale marching band programs, the school is boldly embracing this moment to reimagine music education in a way that resonates with today's young men." Band members were caught off guard by the change, according to parents. Students had been preparing since July for the upcoming season. The school administration's letter to parents suggests that in recent years, the band program has faced difficulties with recruitment, and that additionally, the school's band director, Melissa Sorrow, recently stepped down from her role to focus on family. The letter continued, quote, "This decision was not made lightly, and it comes with deep gratitude for all who have contributed to the program's proud history, especially our faithful men and students from other schools who were part of our program. While we honor the legacy of our marching band, the Music Studio represents our future, a space where our faithful men will not only play and perform, but also to learn to harness the technology and creativity that drive today's music industry. This is not a step back, it is a bold step forward." One former marching band parent, who asked to remain anonymous, said, quote, "I am especially disappointed to see a school that sells itself as being a more enlightened, independent alternative to the public school system follow in the footsteps of the public schools by cutting arts programming." Dateline, Houston, Texas. The University of Houston has appointed Madeline Gregory as visiting assistant professor and assistant director of bands at its Moores School of Music. Gregory will work with all aspects of the university's athletic bands and will assist with concert ensembles for its Moores School of Music. Gregory is a 2019 University of Houston alum. She was a member of the Wind Ensemble, Symphonic Winds, Opera Orchestra, and Cougar Brass, and she was a 5-year member of the Spirit of Houston Marching Band, serving as drum major for 3 years. In her final season, she served as head drum major and received the Dr. Bill Moffitt Member of the Year Award. Gregory earned a master's degree in band studies from Sam Houston State University and has served as band director at Keller Middle School and most recently at Oak Ridge High School, both in Texas school districts. And that's news and notes from the band world. If you have a news item you think should be included in this segment, send me a link via email to heybandwagon@yahoo.com. Now we'll take a quick water break and meet you on the other side. Hope you'll stay with me. Okay, let's pick it up at the second strain. In this episode's second strain are a few thoughts about something that happens at this time of year and this time of year only, when the intensity and focus and single-mindedness of the drum corps activity is in the rearview mirror and its participants move into the next phase of the marching and music calendar, namely heading back into the world of school bands. As my conversation with Chris Serrard a few episodes ago suggested, drum and bugle corps and fall semester school marching bands are quite different beasts, whether the school bands are very competitive or not. Drum corps eat, sleep, and breathe their work on those 11 minutes of finely honed, carefully crafted, ferociously demanding artistry, and the advertising tagline for all of it is marching music's major league, and not without justification. Safe to say, not every college band or high school band performs, operates, or behaves in quite that way. Their members also have classes to attend, papers to write, and, their whole lives outside a band, which sometimes include jobs or family life or whatever. When I marched in college and was beginning to grasp what drum corps even was, and ever since, I've always watched the drum corps people as they returned to the ranks that were full of people who might not have been able to earn a spot in a corps, who had different priorities, who liked the marching activity for different reasons. And sometimes I've seen the recently returned corps marchers struggle to get back into an activity where perfection is not always the goal, where work ethic is more an aspiration than an expectation sometimes. No knock on either side of that little difference in approach, not from me. I never marched corps, but I think I can imagine that the return to scatter bands and fight songs and such is indeed a difficult one, and it's nobody's fault. It's a little like dropping a Major League Baseball player into a Sunday afternoon pickup game and telling him to lighten up. It probably feels like a downshift. And conversely, very often the folks who do band because they want to have an enjoyable time making music and to do so with their friends may have a hard time understanding why the returning drum corps members are so uptight about all that. Isn't band supposed to be fun? Of course, different people have different ideas of fun. Not long ago, a company called Forte Athletics, which creates specialized fitness programs tailored to the unique demands of marching performance, that's what its website says, they posted several series of thoughts on social media, which, in their own way, addressed a bit of this. Now, they obviously focused on the physical side of high-demand marching. That's their business. But I think a lot of what they talked about, the perils of the physical preparation and training and then execution during a corps summer, can have effects that extend into the psychological realm once it's time to bob the hornbells left and right, play fight songs, and not necessarily expect everyone to hit their dots perfectly and play with exacting intonation every single time. I sound like I'm dumping on school bands. I'm really not. But drum corps is at that rarefied air level. And most school bands, high school, college, whatever, aren't. Won't be. Can't be. So here are some of the things that the Forte Athletics people said. The first series of thoughts was entitled, "Your drum corps season is over. Now what?" For months, every hour of your day had purpose. You knew where to be, what to do, and who was beside you. Now you wake up alone with no schedule on a whiteboard. The silence feels heavy. The pace feels slow. The people you've grown to love are scattered across the world. It's okay to feel lost right now. You poured everything you had into the season, and it leaves a hole when it's done. That ache you feel is real. It's your body and mind adjusting to a new rhythm. The best thing you can do right now is give yourself structure again. Keep moving. Set small goals. Schedule your days so you have reasons to get up and places to be. Stay connected to your people. Don't go through this alone. Pour yourself into something that challenges you, whether it's school, work, or training. The process of becoming great is the same. You know what it takes. Same you, same standard. Don't let this be the greatest thing you ever do. Let it be the spark that propels you into what's next. One day, you'll look back and remember the heat, the pressure, the battles you fought that nobody else saw, and you'll realize you kept going when it would have been easier to quit. You'll remember the moments you doubted yourself and how you proved yourself wrong. You'll remember the people who stood beside you and the family you built along the way. You've already done something most people will never attempt. Be proud of that. The next series of thoughts was entitled Body by Drum Corps. Here's what it said. Body by drum corps is what happens when you train more than you sleep. That changes your body fast, but it's impossible to keep once you have real-world responsibilities. Drum corps is extreme. 8 to 12 hours of movement per day, carrying weight in the heat, cleaning drill, dancing, racking up reps each block. With that much cardio and no dedicated strength work, fat burns off, muscle breaks down, water weight drops. All summer in drum corps, your corps bought the food, cooked your meals, told you when to eat, planned your day, ran the workouts. Your corps was your personal chef, trainer, and life coach. Now, that's all on you. Tour life means constant training. Real life means more responsibilities, less movement, different demands. Your body changes when your routine changes. That's normal. Life after drum corps can mess with your head. Pressure to keep your physical appearance, not recognizing yourself, fear of eating too much, worry about losing size, feeling low without structure. You're not the only one who feels this way. Your body is supposed to change when your life changes. Accept it, then decide what you want next. After drum corps, start with one move. Cook one meal from start to finish. Plan one workout you can keep. Block 1 hour to move your body. Build from there. Tour gave you structure. Life after drum corps means building your own. And the final series posted online was called Who Are You Without Your Drum Corps? It said, who are you without the uniform? Who are you without your section? Who are you when there's no finals night to train for? Who are you without a crowd cheering you on? The crash you feel right now is real. It has a name, post-tour depression. After tour, post-tour depression can make the days feel heavy. You wake up late. The days feel empty. You don't want to move. You keep replaying your show, chasing the feeling. You miss your drum corps family, the bus rides, the silly rituals, the long days in the sun. Now you wake up alone, and it feels wrong. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you gave everything. The emptiness is the cost of going all in. In short, it turns out there was a lot more going on inside recently finished drum corps members' heads when they would hit the school athletic fields for band rehearsals than any of the rest of us band for enjoyment people may have realized. So they may not appear to understand that school band is a different context, full of different rules and different expectations, and definitely not nearly the same physical and musical demands. They may make snippy comments about how these non-corps people sharing the field with them don't have a great work ethic. They may act in ways that seem to us non-drum corps people like they're trying to make us understand how much better at this sport they are. And yes, I did think that there was a tiny bit of responsibility that they had to assume, that they needed to come to grips with the fact that no, this is not a drum corps we're running here, but no, we mere school band folks are not trying to be less than, we're not trying to screw this up, we're not slacking off. We just didn't live in the rarefied air of marching music's major league, and, blasphemy, some of us might not choose to live there. As one of the instructors of the Velvet Knights back in the late 80s once said in an interview, we want a good show, man. And we do. We don't want our halftime show to be a ragged mess. We do take pride in what we do as well, just maybe not with the off-the-planet levels of intensity and detail that drum corps requires. Our idea of a good show, man, is on a slightly different scale, facing a slightly different direction. Yes, I've had conversations in which you would listen to me and think, he might be a tiny bit defensive about this. And you wouldn't be wrong. Major League Baseball is frankly incredible in its level of performance, but Sunday afternoon slow-pitch teams take their fun seriously, too, in their own way. Through all that, one obvious challenge is for drum corps veterans to downshift into the school band world. Don't know whether I even like that phrase. But another, less obvious challenge is for us school band people to maybe offer a little grace to the folks who spent their whole summer in a pressurized chamber and who may now be suffering from a case of the musical bends. All right, let's observe a grand pause, and on the other side of that, I've got a conversation for you that I know you will enjoy. Hope you'll stick around. Okay, let's change keys and get into the trio section. In this episode's trio section, I'm pleased to be joined by one of the leading figures in Massachusetts music education. And let's just say that I've had a number of people look at me with that look, saying to me, how have you not connected with this person yet? I don't know. Bad luck, we'll chalk it up to. She leads the bands and jazz ensembles at Newton South High School with a track record of top ratings at state and national festivals, including a couple of minor league ones, only the Charles Mingus and the essentially Ellington High School Jazz Festivals, nothing really. She's received accolades that include the Massachusetts Instrumental and Choral Conductors Association Hall of Fame Award in 2022, the National Federation of State High Schools Outstanding Music Educator Award in 2023. This year, the Jazz Education Network named her as its John Laporta Jazz Educator of the Year, and in 2023 and 2024, she was a Grammy quarterfinalist. She's the founder of a particular project which we will 100% talk about here, but I want to let her talk about it, even though some of my listenership are probably right now shouting at their podcast players, say the name! And I'm super committed to avoiding spoilers, I guess. Please help me welcome to the program band director, jazz educator, and advocate for gender equity in jazz, Lisa Linde. Hello, Lisa.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, too. Well, the last time I saw you, we chatted for so long. I feel like who knows what's going to happen today.
We will, of course, dig into, well, honestly, whatever you'd like to dig into, but undoubtedly that organization of which you are the founder, he said, still avoiding spoilers. But first, as I always do, because we must lash ourselves to a format, I'll begin with my usual set of band-oriented lightning round questions. The first one being, what is your primary instrument?
Trombone.
And the next question I ask, for some people there's next to no subtext, and for other people there's a whole backstory, but how did you get into playing trombone?
Mine has a good backstory, I would say, because I started out playing flute, you know, the way a lot of us do through the public schools in fourth grade. And why did I choose the flute? I actually had my eye on maybe a violin or a trombone after the demos, but my best friend, Sarah, picked the flute and I wanted to be with her. So I said, sure. I mean, I didn't know what any of these would be like. And then the funny part of the story, or it wasn't funny at the time, but at the end of 8th grade, you take an audition to have seating, because this is the 80s, right? So you take an audition to have a seating placement for 9th grade. And so when you show up in 9th grade in August, probably around this time of year for marching band camp, you know, there's a bulletin board with all the rankings. And so I'm looking for my name in the flute section, and I keep looking and I keep looking lower and lower. My friends are around me finding their names. And finally I spot my name, second to last flute. I beat Vanessa. I still remember her name. And then I talked to Vanessa later and found out she never took an audition. So I was literally the last chair flute player.
Lord.
And I can remember my band director. I had a fantastic band director, Steve Massey. I grew up in Foxborough, Massachusetts. He's a big reason that I became a band director. And I can remember that fall, him saying to me, you know, there's probably a 16th note run in one of the marching band pieces. And I remember him saying, like, if you practice this, don't you believe that you could play this? And I remember being like, oh, yes, I do. But in my head thinking, who cares? You know, like there's a million flute players here. I just didn't see that as a good use of my time at the age of 13 or 14. And so later that fall, he asked the band if there was anybody that was interested in switching to some of the instruments that we were lacking. So that we had too many flutes, too many alto saxophones, not enough trombones. That's the one that stuck out to me. And so that was the life-changing moment right there. I switched to trombone. And then that same year, of course, they looped me into the lab jazz ensemble. And I didn't realize this. Probably I was thinking about this past year when I had to give the speech for the John Laporta Award. And it dawned on me, I don't think I would have stayed in band if I hadn't had that experience with jazz ensemble. I just vividly remember being shown that I can create some of the phrasing in a big band piece. Never mind, we hadn't even got to improvising yet, right? But just that kind of creative space for me, I think that's what changed everything. So trombone was it after that.
So something of a numbers game was a little bit of the influence to push you in a direction. And the other thing that hits me is that often enough, there are band directors that look around and say, okay, I've got too many flutes. Who can I push to take up another instrument before they've even had a chance to try that instrument they had their eye on for whatever reason?
No, you're saying this, and you're bringing back a memory of, I was nervous to ask him. I didn't know if I would be allowed, if I was the right person somehow. And I wonder how many people thought the thought and then didn't just take that step and ask the question because they were afraid it would be no.
How many people hear the entire conversation in their head before they have it, and so therefore get moved
And then,
away?
yep, not for me.
So is there kind of a laundry list of bands that you've been active with in your life in whatever capacity?
No. I mean, I would say when I got out of college, I was starting to get calls for gigs. I was subbing maybe for my private lesson teacher. I can remember this guy from Berkeley. His name was Jerry Seco, calling me to sub on some things. But it became that I was like getting calls and I would start to say, well, okay, I can't make that rehearsal because I have marching band practice, I have a football game, I have a concert. And then I end up getting a little bit older. I have two boys of my own. And it became, especially when I had kids, I was not even picking up my trombone at all. I just recently have started about 2 summers ago, 3 summers ago, I went out and got a new trombone. And I've been taking some improv lessons to just go back over. I teach improv, but I need an accountability partner. And I wasn't brought up in that tradition, so I also want to see, like, I've figured out a lot of ways to teach it, but how much of it is wrong or could be better. I found out that a lot of things I thought I invented, and then I take a lesson and they're like, well, why don't you try to create your own bass line? I'm thinking, oh, geez, I thought I came up with that one. So taking some lessons and just trying to get out and play. If anybody asks me to play, it's a yes. I played this summer with, I want to say a newer band. It's called the Boston Modern Big Band. And if you're from Massachusetts, there's this wind group called the Metropolitan Winds. It's a great group. It's been around for a long time. And a lot of players from that group evidently form the basis. And I had a great time. We played a gig probably about a month ago, and they asked, do you want to play lead? I'm like, my chops are not in that great shape, but I'm used to playing lead trombone. I did it a lot in my formative years. So I was like, we'll see what I can do. And then I get the music, and it's not kind of what a lot of the big bands, that just play in the community. It's like a 1 or 2 page arrangement of something, and it's you can do it. These are like, they're pulling out all the stops, and I'm up in the stratosphere. I'm counting my ledger lines. Is that a C? Is that a C or a D? Like B flat? What is that note? But I had a great time, and it just feels good to play again.
I kind of feel like you've undersold your time in the middle of the UMass jazz community, though.
Well, it was funny. I just told somebody this story recently. I remember my freshman year auditioning. There was a spot open in the top jazz ensemble, and I wanted that spot. I wanted to be in with those people, and I didn't get it. And it turns out to be a really lucky thing because I got to spend some time with Dave Sporny in the chapel jazz ensemble. And he was my professor too, right? He was the trombone applied professor. So at some point he figured I was probably a little perturbed, and he kind of pulled me aside and he said, do you know why, you didn't get into the top jazz ensemble? I said, no, like, please tell me what to practice. And he said, we needed a lead player in the chapel jazz band, and you have great lead chops, and there's other people that could play the third trombone part in the top band. And so I was mad and happy about that. And I sometimes wonder too, and this is only as I got older, being a young woman, is it easier to say, well, she can wait to play in the top band, we'll put her here? Had I been a freshman boy, I don't know. You know what I mean? And I love Mr. Sporny. There was nobody's kind of scheming against women at all, but I sometimes wonder, do we come across differently in the back of people's minds, including our own, right? I think for a long time, the glass ceiling, it was like, I thought the glass ceiling was something you could see through it, right? And see what you weren't getting. But it dawned on me, the glass ceiling's called the glass ceiling because you don't see it there. You keep hitting something. You don't even realize you're hitting this thing that's preventing you from getting through. We all don't see it. It's not that, I don't feel anyone was ever out to get me or keep me in a place. We all live with things. We are just brought up a certain way, and it's like we don't recognize sometimes what's happening.
Okay, I'm gonna go think about that for a while.
I had always heard that term, and I just thought, I didn't think about it a lot. Glass ceiling, yeah, that makes sense. Something is there. Shatter the glass ceiling.
I thought that I had set this up really well with my question about how'd you get into playing trombone, because I thought we were going to go there right immediately. And so I'm just going to say we first crossed paths earlier this summer at the New England Band Directors Institute, where you were presenting a couple of clinics, and one of them was called brackets, where are the, close brackets, women in the band? Perhaps not the only issue you've championed in your career, but I feel like it's probably safe to say, is it not, that that's the one you're most passionate about and most visible about? And I swear I thought you were going to talk about picking up the trombone. I had not remembered that you did talk in one of those sessions about picking up the flute first. So I am now abandoning the idea of avoiding spoilers, because let's be honest, this is an interesting thing. A nonprofit organization that you founded, am I pronouncing it right? Is Jazzhers?
Jazzhers.
Which is, he says, getting out of the way.
We just revamped our mission statement, so I'm not going to probably repeat it word for word, but we're an organization committed to expanding what it looks like to be in a jazz ensemble and empowering the missing voices, young women, non-binary musicians, trying to make sure that we don't experience that glass ceiling, that we don't know is there. We don't realize we could be doing it to ourselves. So doing what we can to expand representation at all levels.
There are some people I can remember the exact moment that I met them first. And there are some organizations that probably can point to the exact moment of inspiration for the establishing of this group, this ensemble, this organization. Was there one particular moment that got you thinking, okay, this is what it has to be and this is when it has to be?
Yeah, it was Wynton Marsalis, 2018, in the Q&A at my first appearance with my jazz ensemble at Essentially Ellington. His words struck a chord with me. And to back up, before I had arrived there, that was the first year I made national competitions with my jazz ensemble. We went to the Charles Mingus Festival first, and I play trombone. I'm often been the only girl in the jazz ensemble, maybe one other. I'm a band director, whether that's the jazz ensemble or the wind ensemble. It's a male-dominated field. I love it. I have so many great friends in the field, so I'm used to that. But sometimes I would look and, we have smaller events in the state, and I might be the only woman at the state finals. And then, Berkeley Jazz Festival was around for a long time. And I used to count the number of women bringing jazz ensembles. It was usually 5% band directors. Then I would try to go find them and just see who they were, because how weird someone like me, right? I didn't usually see that. And so for this Mingus Festival, I went and did some digging, and I could find Sarah Klein from Berkeley, California, who was a familiar name. Well, she was not a familiar name yet. She would become a familiar name after this whole trip to New York for Essentially Ellington. So that was the only one I could find. So I thought I might be number 2, second woman ever at the Mingus Festival. I just could not bear to look at the Essentially Ellington list. I didn't want to know. It just, that is the performances are live streamed. People watch them for years. They have their favorite bands. It's like the Olympics of jazz. I just couldn't look. So I kept my head down, but I had a coworker who was chaperoning that year, and she was asking me, what do you think it was in your upbringing that told you could put yourself in these spaces? Did your parents say something? Were you just born thinking this? Did you do it even though you were scared? And so we got in a lot of thinking about that, and I didn't have an answer. And I had, at that point in time, 2 girls in my jazz band. So it was not like I had just become their band director and flocks of girls. And in fact, the exact opposite. I was very proud of myself for the first 30 years of my teaching that I had a jazz band full of boys and really connected with them and got along with them and had great relationships, just like my mentors. I was doing a good job, right?
And they didn't seem to look at you in any way other than, she's my band director.
Yeah. So isn't that great? This is excellent. I thought I was done. And it wasn't until I went to this Essentially Ellington and was asked those questions by my colleague who was chaperoning, and then a girl in the Q&A, and I'll have to go and see what band she was from. But it was one of the finalist bands. The students all get to ask questions, and she stood up and said something to the effect of, I don't see myself represented in Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, most jazz ensembles. And she was asking Wynton for advice. And I thought, it's Wynton Marsalis. Pretty sure he knows a lot of things. And I just sat back saying, he is just going to say a sentence that ties it all up in a bow and has the answer. That's not what happened. I've actually gone back. You can go into their YouTube channel and you can check out. I've watched that probably 5 or 6 more times. Every time I watch his answer, I get more out of it than the previous time. His answer was deep, it was complex. And basically, his answer was the issue is deep and complex. But if you see a void or a lack in your circumstances, his message was put yourself out there, put yourself in there. And I just felt in that moment, I just felt like he was speaking directly to me that I see a lack, I see a void, and I'm the grown up. The student, she needs to still be a student. It was me who had to go home. And so 6 months later, I did the first Jazz Hers event. I came up with the name Jazz Hers and I knew I had to do something. I'll say it has changed shape since that was 2018. It has changed shape many times over the past 7 years. I thought I was just going to be a band director who did a few events to bring awareness. And it just turned into, as I did each event and started to look and see what people got out of it, I kept kind of trying to steer the ship in that direction of what I thought everyone needed.
So, what were the events like early on, and what makes now different from then?
I think the biggest thing is that I thought that I was not out gigging all the time, so I needed to hire other people to teach the events. And I didn't realize how much I had learned. I teach jazz improv. I created jazz improv classes at Newton South when I went there. And so I kept thinking I would hire other people who knew more, then I would do that and watch. And I would keep thinking, there's a delicate way to go about teaching improvisation to anyone, not just girls, right? It's scary to stand up, in front of people and play a melody, right? It's scary. We don't do that in like a concert band, right? We don't go down the line so much anymore. Play your part, play your part, play your part. It's too much pressure. So that was one of the first big things I needed to realize, is that I did know what I was doing and kind of lose the imposter syndrome a little bit.
Yeah.
And then part two, I started to do some ensemble sessions where we met weekly. And I hit a point, I was just frustrated because I was getting my own students from Newton South to sign up, but not many, one or two from a neighboring town. I thought, I have 2 kids at home. I have a full-time job, and it's a high pressure job. We're going out and we're doing a lot of competing and it's busy. I'm also doing a nonprofit, and I wanted it to have more outreach, but because the universe, I think, it just gives you only what you need or what you can handle. And in this case, I think it was maybe a little bit of both, but those students who were my students, what I found is that they were very different when they were in a room, when they were in the majority. And I had read research about it. And it's nice to hear research, but sometimes it's just much more powerful when you see it just like happen in front of you, right? It's like, wow. And so I had a French horn player who was not in any jazz. I had a bari sax player who was really a bassoonist and had just started jazz band like 3 weeks ago and would not improvise in front of the jazz ensemble. But in that after school space where they were in the majority of all girls and non-binary students, they would just let it rip. They would play out, they would laugh, they would take chances. And I kept thinking, it's almost like I'm seeing a different side of their personality that I don't get to see in the school day. And then I really had to step back and think, if this had been a student from another school, the way I had been dreaming, all these different students coming to me, I would have just thought they were confident kids all the time.
To begin with.
Yep, I wouldn't. So now I have this like really deep knowledge of what the impact is when we take out that feeling of being only one or two people of a certain genre, in a room. And that doesn't apply to gender. It can apply in any way if anyone is in a space where they feel the only or one of very few. It's called stereotype threat. You don't want to hold up the things about you. So I'm getting older now. I'm in my 50s, and I go sometimes on the computer and I misspell things, and I will have a young person with me. They're like, "Oh, you didn't spell that right." And I'm like, "Well, I know how to spell it. I just can't see anymore. I don't have my reading glasses on." Right. And so it's that kind of thing. Like, it could be age, right? When you get older and people think, "Oh, you're a little slow." It's like, no, my eyes are not working the way they used to. And you don't want people to think that about you. So it's the same thing. It could be gender, it could be race, it could be religion, it could be all of the things.
Somewhere I read something that you either wrote or it was a response to an interview question somewhere, but I know that I read it and it talked about the difference between, I'm not going to get it right, so I'm not going to try to nail the exact phrasing of it, but the sound of those students in an environment that is clearly different than maybe what they were usually playing in. As much as anything else, you were thinking it was a question of how much they feel like they belong in that space.
Belonging versus fitting in.
That's what
right?
it was. That's what it was.
And Brene Brown has
That's
a
what
great
it was.
little way that she captures that, belonging. And I won't say it the way she says it, but, belonging is just you get to be yourself. Fitting in is changing yourself to be a part of the group.
Which in middle school and in certain moments in high school is exactly what you want to be doing. I remember this vaguely, but I do.
The fitting in or the belonging, it's really both, right?
The desperate bid to fit in and not be seen as weird and outside of because we all have to conform to the concept of what is cool in that moment.
Right. And at that age, we're just even trying to, and that's why in jazz, I'll take this back to the Jazzers mission, we see in that middle school time to high school, 5th, 6th graders will see equal gender distribution. And as they get older, we drop. We just see, and it's a massive drop off. And so it's that same, it's this critical time that you're wanting to conform to gender roles that are set out by society so that people will view you the way you want to be viewed. And it leads you in. And that's the other thing, like, I was weird maybe in high school when I switched to trombone. I didn't care if my face got all like smushed up and red, but I distinctly remember having conversations with friends saying, you should play trombone too. You should join the jazz band. You should take a solo. They're like, I'm not doing that. And it was, I don't want my face to look like that. Or we wore something that looked like a tuxedo. They didn't want to wear that uniform. There were just a lot of different reasons it didn't kind of conform to their view of what they wanted to express as who they were, what their gender was.
That goes a little way toward explaining my memory of when I was starting the trumpet in the 4th grade. Again, yes, because other friends of mine were going to go that direction. I thought, I like to think that I was interested in the trumpet on my own, but who knows what the proportion of that was. But once we got into the larger band situation, I looked over and there was this fellow named Dana Powell who was playing the flute, and he was a 5th grader and I was a 4th grader. I went, oh, okay. And I knew that most of the flute players were girls. And so for that reason, I looked over, I saw something that was an outlier. I went, oh, okay. But I do not remember him being in the middle school band, and certainly not high school.
It's like we get those messages, and maybe somebody said something, maybe nobody said anything. But you look around and you're like, why is no one else like me doing the thing that I'm doing? So not everybody is going to go down that path. Some people will. And it's interesting for me sometimes to talk about women or talk to women that have made it in the jazz field. People my age and older talk a lot about having to fit in, having to learn how to hang. I can remember my mom working in an office in corporate America when I was like middle school and high school, and it was the 80s. Shoulder pads were in, the male silhouette, the pantsuit at work, right? We were at that point in time trying to assimilate into that culture, right? We had never been maybe part of the workforce as women. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. And so I think there are a lot of people who will say now, and that's even when I run Jazzers events, what has changed? I realize I don't want people to come in and tell the group, you need to be more aggressive and assertive. You need to learn how to hang. No. Nope. Now, what do we need to learn how to do? I don't know. Right? I mean, maybe I do know. We want to be able to just be who we are. If we're quiet, that should be okay. If whatever the opposing way of being is that wasn't working, and that could be, boys too. This kind of work benefits in the long run. It benefits everyone. If we have a space that isn't only the stereotypical masculine values, right? Because not every man contains every stereotypical masculine value, right? Might have 2 or 3, might not have this one. Everybody's different. So the more we can be accepting of all ways of being. And so the younger people that I talk to that have made it, where the older ones are a little bit tougher, you can find some great interviews with like Ingrid Jensen and Terry Lynn Carrington, and they're making it as a woman. And like 20 years ago, they're asked, how does it feel to be a woman? They're like, why are we talking about me being a woman? I don't want to talk about that. And I think that was a period in time. That was a great answer for that period in time. But I think we're actually moving to a new time. I don't know if they would say that same thing anymore, because you should be able to be a woman and do this thing and be able to talk about it. I guess sometimes as a woman, they're wondering, why don't you ask the men how they feel being a man in the jazz world, right? Like, so, and I feel like younger people have slightly different stories, because we are, even though it might not always feel like it, we are evolving, we are changing slowly but surely.
It makes me wonder a couple things. One, exactly how far down the path from zero to where it is that we want to get that I am in observing and thinking this, but also I wonder what the participants in this particular story, being that they're young people, think. And the story is this: I think it was probably 2016. It's one of my favorite, essentially, Ellington performances. It's the Beloit High School from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, the 2016 performance is wonderful because they are 100% supporting each other, like actively the whole time. And what a great thing to watch. I think it may have been a couple years after that for at least one of the selections, the entire rhythm section was women. And I remember thinking a number of things, and they all slammed into each other, and it was very complicated. But I remember thinking, cool. And I also remember thinking, I can't wait for the day when it's not cool, it just is. It's just nobody cares.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the history of jazz, at least to my eye, it's probably the last, and Catherine Needleman might disagree with me, but jazz is probably the last bastion of supremely male dominance. At least it has looked like that to me. Now, with that in place, in that moment, did those four girls, piano, bass, drums, guitar, think that? Did their colleagues and the rest of the band think that? Or what did they think? Are they much more enlightened than I am?
And maybe for them, it's their new normal, right? That's their high school experience. When I want to say my junior year in high school, there was lead trumpet, lead trombone, and lead alto were all young women. I know that there was probably 3 young women in the alto sax section, at least 2, if not 3, in the trombone section. Like we had a healthy number. It was just the way it was. But I would make district and all state and be the only girl all the time. It's interesting. I don't know what the people who are experiencing it think. And I get a lot of people who will get really excited to tell me that their jazz band, we have like 7 girls in the jazz band. And I'm thinking, what I'll say is that's fantastic. But what I want to also say is that's, still not great. And if you have a jazz band with only 2 girls, like we should equally as often see a jazz band with only 2 boys.
I believe it was Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg who was asked when it would be enough women on the Supreme Court, and she said when there are 9.
Yeah. And some people, I can remember hearing that, maybe myself being younger and thinking, ooh, well, that's a little attitude.
That was sassy.
Yeah, that was sassy. But I didn't understand it. And I just understand it in a different way now. Like, no, we don't mean I want women to take over the world. I would just like to see whatever is happening for men also happen for women, non-binary, like everyone, to have that same opportunity. And when we see, this is what Catherine Needleman helped me understand this at the age of 50 something, right? And so I've experienced this kind of stuff my whole life. She kept insisting there was definitely some kind of gender discrimination at play all the time. She was insisting it was. She kept insisting, and I'm like, okay, that seems like a little bit much to me. But the 110th time I read her writing that, that's when it clicked. Like, it's like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote. She's not asking for all women. She's just saying that if all things were equal, that we would probably see this orchestra has lots of women, this one has lots of men. It was whoever was best that day.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But when people keep saying it's whoever's best that day, I guess the women aren't the best. What? That's where, and it's easy for people to hear that and have knee-jerk reactions, myself included.
I would say the same for me. The first time I ever read her stuff, I went, yeah, absolutely, without question. And I kept reading as well. And there were moments where I thought, it can't be all the time, can it? And I heard myself think that and thought, okay, so maybe I need to just shut up and read for a little while longer. But curious that we're doing this in this moment. A couple of days ago online, I saw a quote that said, white privilege doesn't mean your life has been hard. It means that your skin color isn't one of the things making it harder. Change a couple of words, and I imagine it can apply very nicely to the topic of gender.
Right.
Here is how many thousands of years worth of, I'll say it, the patriarchy. Yeah. It's yet another example of it's the way we've always done things, which is one of my least favorite phrases.
Yeah. And I mean, you're making me think too, the way we've always done it, when I look at the people missing from jazz, and then I look at the other part of our instrumental program that a lot of us jazz educators are also responsible for in a high school band is the high school band. Mm-hmm. And there's that way we've always done it. Sit in your chair, practice those 16th note runs that my band director wanted me to practice. And what is that netting us, 10 years down the road? Like, who's graduating from high school and going to J.W. Pepper and buying a Granger piece and calling up all their friends and saying, let's get together and play some Granger? Yeah. Like, no one's doing that. And I love Granger, I love Holst, I love all of those composers. But if we take a step back as music educators and think, what are we doing here? We want people to play. We want people to create. We want them to play with other people, and maybe not just alone, but all of our teaching really is focused on practice your scales alone, play alone, do things alone. I don't like practicing alone. I don't like being alone with an instrument.
Because all we hear is us.
Yeah, and that's not fun to hear. And there were people during the pandemic, we did some Zooms. I can remember distinctly Kenny Rampton and Sherman Irby, both from Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, talking about how frustrating it was to be playing during the pandemic. And each of them saying, like, at various points, they kind of just didn't play. And I thought, if you don't love I love hearing you play, but if you don't love hearing you play, wow, what are the rest of us doing?
And I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. I was thinking of it of all the art forms where playing with other people and reacting to what they're doing is important. There's one that COVID killed because literally of the technical issues, the delay, but on top of that, being trapped in a room with yourself.
Yeah.
There are a small subset of the population that love that, and everybody else, no.
And that's where, like, I keep wondering, is the concert band formula really the right way to be doing this? I don't think it is.
In terms of performance or in terms of programming?
In terms of, it's a great cost-effective way of delivering music instruction in an institutionalized setting. But is it doing what we want it to do? Which, do we see people playing their instruments all the time? It's something that we whittle it down, and the best programs have only 10% of the kids in the school. If you have 10% of the kids in the school playing in the band, you're doing a great job. But are you? Like, doesn't everybody like music? Who does not like music? And even people who were like, oh, I could never play an instrument. What's your favorite song? They have a favorite song. They have a favorite band, And I don't know, I just dream of a world, how cool would the world be? And I mean, I've had administrators that come through, my school, and the ones that understand music, of course, maybe I think and hope they will favor the music department. But what I've noticed is that the ones who didn't have music in their lives, didn't play an instrument, didn't have some kind of artistic outlet, there's something very much missing in the way they see the world, what they value. And I think when we look at the really big picture of what's happening globally right now, having more people that have spent some really fun time in an ensemble with other people playing someone else's artistic creation and then maybe creating their own, the many ways that helps you understand pieces of humanity from your point of view and from others' point of view. Maybe the composer was from 150 years ago, so you're even connecting with someone who's not presently with us. That's really powerful.
And not unrelated, how many members of Congress were music students, were music ensemble people?
I did not do that research before the show.
I know it is absolutely a rhetorical question, but I would be really interested to know. It feels like there are some of them that have never done anything with anybody else in a joint. effort.
It's like we're still in middle school sometimes with the kind of conversations that are happening right now, and who we're trying to appeal to.
From time to time, and more often recently, I've recorded conversations that just flat do not fit into my standard 35 or 40-minute trio section block o' time. There's just too much great stuff in them. I don't know what to cut. And yes, dear listener, this is one of them. In our next episode, Lisa and I will pick up where we left off, and I think you will not be disappointed at having to wait for the exciting conclusion. And one small programming note here. I planned and recorded the dogfight segment that you will hear next a good while earlier than I recorded this conversation with Lisa, but my heavens, is there a supremely smooth segue from our last few thoughts to these next few thoughts. So let's take a quick break, and then, well, you will see what I mean. This is BandWagon. Here comes the dogfight. This episode's dogfight is comprised largely of thoughts from the composer Brian Balmages. I've included a quote or two from him in other BandWagon episodes because, in addition to being a very skilled crafter of band compositions for all levels, he's also a very thoughtful fella, if his social media posting is any guide. The post of his, which I'm going to read to you in this segment, appears at first glance to be political, or at least appears to address current events. And I know that's not necessarily what people come to this podcast for. In fact, it's probably not at all what people come to this podcast for. But as I've noted before, we band people do live in the world. And as much as we, all of us, have ever enjoyed flinging ourselves into the band room and shutting out the rest of the crazy world for 45 minutes, or a couple of hours, or however long, the band activity exists in the context of a world that is oftentimes run by people who just flat do not get band, or music, or the arts, or culture, or humanity. We do have to deal with the consequences of decisions made by people who are a challenge in that way. And that's the context into which Mr. Balmages has offered these thoughts. To all elected officials, I wish more of you had been in honor bands. I wish you had played in an orchestra. I wish you had experienced that tingle down your spine when singing with your peers in Carnegie Hall, the Sydney Opera House, or your local high school auditorium. I wish you could feel, or perhaps remember, the joy of working together with a group of people you have never met before, yet you all come together to accomplish something glorious. I wish you could remember how the audience reacted during and after your performance, and how, in that moment, there was no division. I wish you could see how so many artists work together, how we embrace each other's ideas, how we encourage each other, pick each other up when one of us fails, and how we motivate each other to get back up again and create once more. We do not degrade each other, not the real artists. We celebrate each other. We keep an open mind, even when it involves art that we may not appreciate or understand. We keep an open mind, knowing that all art has the opportunity to make us grow, get more in touch with the various cultures in our world, make the world a more beautiful place. I wish you could realize that the arts bring out the very best qualities in people, those very same qualities that are lacking in today's politics. Musicians can come together from all over the world to a single space, sometimes for only 1 to 3 days. In that time, we work on a program. We make musical decisions and learn to communicate these thoughts to an audience through musical phrases. We learn to appreciate our similarities, and we learn to embrace our differences. We all have our own stories, and each one of us learns to make our own voice heard, but in tandem, not one against the other. The result creates such powerful experiences that the audience can find themselves completely stunned at what they just experienced and how lucky they were to be in that moment with those people in that place. A band cannot work at all if its sections sabotage each other in a race to grab power. An orchestra will fail if they do not listen to each other, move together, and strive for balance. A choir will never be understood if they do not learn to articulate together. A conductor will never be effective without embracing the idea that we are one of the musicians and we must connect with the orchestras we conduct. Without any of this, we destroy the very reason these ensembles exist. As we all consider the importance of the arts in school education in the coming year, we have to acknowledge that our world is clearly broken. There is so much anger in the world, and it sometimes feels difficult just to breathe. People refuse to work together. They refuse to hear each other. They refuse to work as an ensemble. They refuse to embody the very traits that are taught best with music, the traits that make us human and that bring beauty and joy into a world that so desperately needs it. I wish more of us were in music. I wish we would stop fighting with each other, sometimes just for the sake of fighting. Maybe if we just stopped everything and took 1 or 2 days to make music, then maybe people would understand and things could be different. I will forever be grateful for the musicians who make up bands, orchestras, and choirs. In a world where trolling is now normal and hate speech finds itself everywhere, music is one of the few things that still finds a way to bring us together, and the musicians developing today may know that better than anyone. Let's hope that the beautiful young performers of today become the leaders we need tomorrow. Okay, one last pause to catch our breath, and then we'll wrap things up for this episode. Thanks for continuing to listen. To wrap up this week, let's take the CODA. For the CODA. Once upon a time, a very good friend and colleague of mine paused in the midst of our conversation about how to structure the marching field show we were dreaming up and said to me, "You know, sometimes no transition is transition." So, in that spirit, as we reach the grand finale of this episode that's been all about different kinds of transition, I present you with a random joke. One which I'm very proud of because I made it up. At least I think I did. I certainly haven't seen it on any of those web pages that list 1,000 musician jokes. I now give you the music joke. I just saw a television ad for a car made by the Kia company called the Cadenza. I assume it's a car that stops dead and makes noises that will never happen the same way again. Thank you so much. I'm here all week. I made that joke up a while ago, and when he saw it, Michael Coogan, you'll remember him from a 2-part trio section interview last October, Michael grabbed the rebound and dunked it home right at the buzzer. He said, "How about the Kia Forte, which is almost the loudest car on the road? Or the Kia Soul, which does not come in white?" Anyway, that's a wrap for this episode of BandWagon. Thanks as always for downloading and listening. BandWagon was written, researched, and produced by your humble host. Musical interludes were produced by Hammerton Media, from source material largely by John Philip Sousa. You can listen to more episodes at the pod's website, heyband.podbean.com. Please give me feedback. Let me know what you like or what you think might change. You can do that using the email address heybandwagon@yahoo.com or leave a 90-second voice message by going to speakpipe.com/heybandwagon. Be aware that I do reserve the right to include your message on the podcast unless you say otherwise. Those contact links and links to this episode's news items, conversation topics, and my interview guest, Lisa Linde, can be found in our show notes, as can a link to BandWagon's merch store, thanks to the good folks at TeePublic. You never know when you're going to run into a sale. Please share the show on social media, and thank you for that. If you enjoy this podcast, please do share it in the direction of someone whom you think might not be a listener yet. Word of mouth really is the best recruiting tool. And to keep up with the podcast, subscribe to BandWagon on the Podbean app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are sold. For now, take care, stay in touch, stay in tune, and we'll do this all again in a fortnight. I'm Rob Hammerton, and to paraphrase a starred thought, life is 10% the changes that happen and 90% how you react to them.